Welcome to Your Brand Amplified, the podcast where we interview marketers, publicists, and brands to learn their stories, what makes them tick, and tips and tricks that make a difference. I am so thrilled today to welcome Ben Leonard to the show all the way from Scotland. Ben, thank you so much for being with me.
It's great to be here, Annika. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so before we get into your story, which I know is billed as the classical millennial entrepreneur success story, I'd love for you to backtrack a little bit, talk about your background. What did you do? Who did you work for before you became an entrepreneur and found so much success?
Yeah, I never realized I would become an entrepreneur. So I'm from Scotland. I grew up in northeast Scotland near our oil town, right? Our version of, I guess, the US equivalent would probably be Houston.
Houston, yeah.
Aberdeen, the oil capital of Europe, really. And so it was almost inevitable that I would end up working in that industry. But I came at it from a pretty different angle. I was the environmental advisor whose job it was to tell the oil guys not to throw chemicals in the sea. So they loved that. I generally enjoyed my job, right? But I kind of felt like something was missing.
Yeah.
And it took a big change in my life for me to realize that I was supposed to be an entrepreneur. 2015, 16, I got really unwell with a heart problem.
Oh.
I'm fine now.
Okay.
And I had to stop work while I recovered. And because of how ill I was, my mental health was really in a terrible situation as well. And I needed something to do, something to distract me, get my teeth into. And I started this brand of fitness equipment as a hobby.
Oh, okay.
And the brand was called Beast Gear. Then I thought, well, I'll try and sell the products directly into gyms. And that did not go well. And I found out I could sell my products on the internet to other people like me. And that did go well. Turns out I was quite good at it. And that is how I became an entrepreneur. And then there's a whole story about what happened with that brand. I don't know if you want to hear it. But
yeah, I want to hear everything.
All right. Well, yeah, it turns out I was pretty good at that. And I recovered. I got back to work, but I was still running this brand on the side, evenings, weekends, lunch hours, sneaking in a little bit when nobody was looking at work. And a couple years in, I quit my job. I could have quit my job sooner, but I was relatively risk averse then. 3 years in, we were generating $6 million per year in sales.
Wow.
And I sold the business at that point. So after about 3.5 years, I sold it. It was the right thing for my family and I at the time. My wife was pregnant. We wanted to move house. And I'd become aware that e-commerce businesses could be sold for quite a lot of money. And I didn't know how long until that bubble would burst. And so I sold it. And now I'm a full-time entrepreneur. I'm building new brands. I'm mentoring others. I'm consulting. I help others to exit their brands. And I've just written a book. So it's gone from, no business experience to fully immersed in entrepreneurship.
Amazing. I think it's fascinating that so many people come to business like that. You're working a job for somebody else. You feel something's missing. And in your case, obviously you had a big inciting incident, your health. You had to take a step and a pause and try to figure out what could you do in this time that you had. And it just happened to strike an amazing chord with so many people that you're able to successfully exit. Congratulations on that. That's an amazing story.
Thank you. Yeah, I can't. If you told me not long before all of that kind of started that that's what was going to happen, I would have laughed. And I suppose it's kind of like I'll always be a biologist, right? I'll always be an ecologist. I'm a nerd for that. And so what I would say is kind of like I didn't know that I had those genes in me, but they were just waiting for, if there's any science nerds listening, sometimes we have genes in us, but they're not switched on until something happens in our environment. And I think that was the case for me. I think I had these entrepreneurial genes. My parents weren't entrepreneurs, but my grandparents on both sides of the family were.
Yeah.
Skipped a generation, big life-changing event happens, genes are switched on.
Yeah. Wow. And so what do you think were some of the keys to your success? Because you said you tried selling to gyms and that wasn't working. But when you started looking at yourself as your ideal customer and selling to yourself as essentially, then you found this great massive success.
Yeah. Well, I think a key part of the success was my naivety because I had no business experience, no marketing experience, and no product development experience. But what I did have was an unfair advantage against someone else with no experience in that I had a scientific background. And so I didn't just haphazardly, chaotically figure it out. I learned by doing it in kind of like a scientific way. So be like, okay, I'm going to try this. I'm going to observe what happens. I'm going to tweak something based on that and go again, like running an experiment.
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, I would just do what came naturally to me, which was find people like me and tell the story and sell to them. So what I didn't do, I could have done, and I'm so glad I didn't, was a lot of people, when they set up a business, they make the mistake of thinking they have to act a certain way. Oh, I'm in business now. This is how businesses act. And when they do that, it's just incredibly boring. Whereas what I did was I kind of, it's almost a cliche now, but I zigged where everyone else zags. So in the fitness industry, it's all about who's the biggest, the strongest, the fastest, the muscliest, sometimes the skinniest. Well, I'm an averagely fit guy with asthma who is never going to win a gold medal in anything. So naturally, I made myself the face of a fitness brand. But it worked.
There are more of you than there are of the others.
Exactly, right. People connect with brands, but they buy from people.
Yeah.
Or rather, you could actually throw that statement in either way. But what matters is that I resonated with my customers. I was basically saying, look, I'm an average Joe, but I deserve the same quality of fitness equipment as elite athletes and super wealthy people.
Yeah.
So here's great quality equipment at a fair price. If you are the heavyweight champion of the world, you're welcome to join our tribe. Boom. But also, if you're super unfit and training for your first 5K or, trying to just get a bit stronger in the gym, lifting weights, you're also welcome in our tribe. And that worked. And that's how we kind of outcompeted a lot of the big boys.
Nice. When you think about Scotland, I don't necessarily think about that as like a center of commerce, right? You think about maybe going to Singapore or the United States, that those people who are just always at it and trying to create these entrepreneurial dreams. So I love that part of your story too. But how did you find the right people? Did you do digital advertising? Were you joining groups like on Facebook or, fitness apps or...
You hit the nail on the head. When you mentioned Facebook there, it wasn't just Facebook, and especially these days, it certainly wouldn't just be Facebook, but it was 99.9% organic. Wow. So it was organic content. Basically, I just started posting where I was hanging out anyway, because my customer avatar was me.
Yeah.
So I would post in the groups where my people were hanging out and build relationships with them, and they would want to support me and my brand. And then people would say, well, Ben, that doesn't scale. Well, it does, because we were still doing that when we were generating $6 million in sales. So let me give you an example. We would every day, this started out me doing it, and then I built systems and gave it to my team. But we would basically, every day, we would identify everyone who had followed us on Instagram, posted our products on Instagram, tagged us on Instagram.
Yeah.
And we would interact with these people one-on-one in the DMs and build relationships with them, which would make them love us.
Yeah.
Because why did they post on Instagram? For attention. But they thought they were just going to get attention from their friends. But they actually got attention from the brand whose product they featured, which blows them away. So now they're like going to do anything we ask them to, like leave a review or join our mailing list. Or a couple months later, we're launching a new product. Hey, do you want to get it for half price? Of course they do. So we can get really cheap product launches. So it's basically all organic. And I think the pinnacle of that was when I recorded a video of myself on my terrible old phone. This was in 2018, I think. I recorded a video of myself wrapping my hands with my boxing hand wraps at my kitchen table. Mm-hmm. And that video has received no paid promotion, and it's almost at 6 million views now.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's just the power of authenticity.
Yes. Yeah. You mentioned so many things that are key and that people spend a lot of time getting degrees to try to learn and figure out, or spending a lot of money on courses, right?
Oh, yeah.
You are your ideal avatar. And most people, I think, who start a business, unless they're doing it because they say, oh, I can make money there, right? Most people are doing it because they are having an issue. And so they were trying to solve their issue. And so you have to think about that when you're thinking about your customer avatar and how you're going to message to them. And you did exactly that. You also engaged. And I think a lot of people forget that too. They think you just post and they'll come. But you actually worked really hard on the community engagement aspect and building this community around yourself and your company and your brand.
Yeah, I think that's the way to do it. And I think even if people are cynical and say, well, this doesn't scale, my answer to that is, A, probably we can find a way to make it scale. I think doing what you think won't scale is a superpower. But B, well, let's suppose that it really won't scale. Well, so what? Let's do it now while we can to build that foundation, get the flywheel spinning. And if it won't scale, well, fine, we'll have to let it go later. But for now, it'll do. And it's going to help us build that foundation and get the brand moving.
Yeah. Yeah. So how has this, I mean, clearly this has to have changed your life in innumerable ways, but how has this changed your life for yourself and your family?
Well, I don't have to work for the man anymore, earning money for shadowy shareholders who you'll never meet. Now I can be incredibly flexible. I work from home most of the time. I go to a co-working space a couple of days a week. I can schedule things around my family. I can take my kids to nursery. I can pick them up. Today's Friday. Everyone else was at work. The town I live in Scotland is like the only town in Scotland with an outdoor swimming pool. It's open only in the summer.
Oh, wow.
And I went there with my kids. Everyone else was at work. And sure, I'm working now and it's the evening here in Scotland, but that's the beauty of flexibility, right? And the other thing it's done is it's given us a safety net. So when we sold the business, that just gave us room to breathe, to take a step back and think about what we wanted to do. Now we're building a house. I've been able to invest in developing new brands, which I'm a huge fan of high barriers to entry. So when I started the first brand, which was the fitness brand B-Skier, the first product that I developed was a jump rope. And it only cost me like a few bucks to make. So pretty low barrier to entry. But now I'm developing brands where it's cost me, 6 figures to have the product designed and way more money to work through all the prototyping and the safety testing, which on the one hand is kind of scary to make all those investments. But on the other hand, actually, the higher the barrier to entry, the safer a bet I think it is because other people can't do it.
Wow.
And the more hoops I have to jump through, the more sure I am that I'm getting it right. And therefore, it's less likely to fail.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess my vision has changed a lot.
Yeah, it sounds like it. But you had to start somewhere, and you started with what you knew.
Yeah, totally. And I think anyone can start there. I know it sounds like a cliche, but I genuinely think that a lot of you mentioned it there before, like, people think you need to have a degree to understand this stuff. I just don't think that's true. I think that what you need is passion, vision, bit of determination, some luck along the way. And you absolutely can turn an idea into a legit brand.
Yeah. And you do have that scientific mind and background. I always think people who have that kind of background or a finance background have a little leg up on others because the way that you're approaching it, because there is so much data analysis that goes into algorithms, making sure your website is set up correctly, making sure you're reaching the ideal avatar, the A/B testing that people do.
Yeah.
So I do think indirectly, perhaps, has helped.
I think you're right. Totally. Like, I'm so glad I learned how to use spreadsheets at university.
Yeah. So when you're looking at new brands now, are you only developing your own or are you investing as an angel or a VC into other people's brands? And what kind of things do you look for?
Sure, yeah. So I'm developing several of my own. All of those projects I partner with others because there's only 24 hours in a day.
Yeah.
And also because a key lesson I learned from the first time around is that it's really important to work with other people who are better than you at your weaknesses.
Yeah.
I do have minority equity in some brands where I have, in some cases, invested a bit. In others, it's a mixture of investment and mentorship, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And what I look for in brands is purpose. So I think that people who have a purpose and brands with a purpose are way more likely to succeed in the long term because they're way more sustainable. Because, sure, ultimately the brand needs to be profitable for it to succeed. For it to succeed, though, to capture the hearts and minds of its customers and potential customers, it has to have purpose.
Yeah.
I think that having a soul is really what is going to be the heartbeat of the business and drive it forward. You only have to look at something like Patagonia to understand that purpose really matters.
Yeah. Because they have such an amazing purpose, but they also made sure they're delivering a really high quality product at the same time. So they didn't skimp on the product development, even though they were purpose-minded.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Quality of product is right up there with purpose. And I think that a quality product, not only is that clearly a requirement in terms of actually selling something you can stand behind and selling something that is going to last, because if it's not a quality product, people are going to cotton on to that and your brand's not going to last. But also, it's half the battle with your marketing. Like, quality product is marketing. Because it markets itself. People will tell people about it. And I think that those two things are really critical when it comes to a successful brand.
Yeah. Are you ready to take your brand to new heights? Join the Brand Amplifier for Entrepreneurs program. Learn how to build, elevate, and amplify your brand with a comprehensive 10-module course. Learn more about it and other ways to implement our strategies at fullcapacitymarketing.com. Click on EFCM Learning Hub for more information. Can't wait to help you amplify your brand. I feel like the last few years, we've seen more of an emphasis on that as well, the purpose behind the brand and leading with that in a lot of ways. Are there other changes that you saw in business, between when you started, when you left your job finally and went all in on your own business, you sold it, and then particularly with the pandemic and everybody kind of having to rethink who they want to be, how they want to work in the world?
Yeah, I have seen quite a lot of things. I mean, so many, but a few come to mind.
Yeah.
There's way more competition now because more and more people are discovering entrepreneurship.
Right.
It used to be entrepreneurs were these other people.
Yeah.
Slightly weird, wacky people. People would immediately think of stereotypes like Richard Branson or Elon Musk.
Right.
Who undoubtedly have done incredible things. But now we're seeing that entrepreneurship is this more accessible idea. Which is fantastic, but there is more competition. I've also noticed and it's kind of linked to more people being interested in purpose, is just more emphasis on brand in general. So previously, if we were talking about like digital entrepreneurship, that's, selling stuff on the internet, basically, a lot of people were just out to make a quick buck by selling stuff on the internet.
Yeah.
But now there is an increasing understanding that if you want to turn that into something that's A, going to last, and B, going to be something you can sell, it really has to be a legit brand. It needs to look and feel and behave like your favorite consumer packaged goods brands that you actually would buy yourself.
Right.
Rather than just being like, okay, how can I source this product and sell it either on Amazon or eBay or whatever?
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like that's true. But then I also see the brands like Temu and other brands like fast product brands that people, it's not really a brand, even though it has a name and it's a company, right? That's more of a commodity where people are just trying to get cheap stuff that they know is going to break down. And so I feel like there's also this push-pull between purpose and making sure that you are authentic and that you're bringing value and a really great product. And then this other side where we're struggling with the fast fashion aspects or the fast products and things that you use maybe once and then they fall apart and you just throw them away.
Yeah, I think that side's always going to be there though.
Yeah.
I think part of that is in some ways it's human nature to look for the path of least resistance. And for many people in their lives, it doesn't make them bad people, but they will just go for the easiest option, which in many ways is the less sustainable option, for instance, which is why, coming with my nature nerd hat on, which I'll always have, right?
Yeah.
I believe that to improve the situation with regards to the environment in the world, we can't change consumer behavior. Hopefully, a lot of consumers will change their behavior. But if we're trying to focus only on that, we're going to fail. We have to just make the default options in supply chains more sustainable. So that is why, for example, one of the brands I'm building now, which is a baby brand, the product we're developing is made from 100% recycled material, mostly plastic recovered from the ocean.
Cool.
Which is partly because it's the right thing to do. And partly because we're going to have to do it anyway, because eventually it's going to be like the law, I hope. And partly just because I want the default option to be the most sustainable option. So the customers don't even have to think about it. They don't have to make a choice between Patagonia and something terrible. They can just buy whatever and know that by default, it's the best option.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for bringing that into the world. And are these some of the things, because you have an e-commerce consultancy, you have your e-commerce brokerage, are these some of the things that you talk about when people want to consult with you on how to build a brand that's going to be highly successful?
I do, although it's not front and center, right? Because ultimately, a lot of people, the first thing that they need to know before I get on my soapbox and start talking about, environmental sustainability and things like that, they need to know how to know that they're developing products or picking products that are going to work, that are going to sell, be profitable, provide a large enough ROI that they can keep buying and selling it, and that they can connect with their audience. So those things are layered on a little later after we've taught the basics. And but there are several people that I worked with who do go down that route. And I touch on it in the book as well. And it's something that I do try to bring in because I think it's really important that as entrepreneurs, right, we make change in the world.
Yeah.
We have a tremendous opportunity to make change in the world. So I think if I can encourage entrepreneurs to do the right thing, then great. But I'm not an activist, right? It's not front and center of what I'm doing.
Yeah. I would say you are an activist, but you're weaving it smartly into the narrative.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. We'll compromise on that.
Well, and this is a perfect segue because I was going to ask you about your book.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Tell us about it.
Absolutely. It's called Quit Stalling and Build Your Brand. And it comes out on October 10th. And I wrote it for two types of people. People who perhaps have an idea but have not given themselves permission to do anything about it yet. Or people who have taken action and they're doing their best. They might even be generating, 7 figures in revenue, but they feel like they need a guide, someone who's been there and done it to help make sure that they're on the right path with their e-commerce business. And so it's a roadmap of classic business principles, but applied to e-commerce. Everything from ideation and product development and validation, right the way through to launching a product, growing a brand, and eventually exiting it. So what it's not, though, is a highly technical book about a particular platform, say Shopify or Amazon or whatever, that's going to go out of date in 5 months. My hope is that people will still be getting value from this in 10 years.
Yeah.
I'm an avid reader and I felt like I had something to offer. And so I started it in May 2022, just finished it, and we're going to publish it on October 10th.
Awesome. And I believe we're going to have a special offer for listeners to be able to download the chapter. And is there going to be a course accompanying the book as well? Are you turning this into something where you can work with multiple people at a time and not just one-on-one?
Yes. I nearly didn't call it a course because I hate courses. Or rather, I hate the slimy gurus who post in front of Lamborghinis and say, buy my 10 grand course and, I'll teach you how to be rich. I'm like the anti-guru in that way. So yeah, the book, if you go to quitstallingbook.com/YBA, as in Your Brand Amplified, you will get a free chapter now before the book comes out, a free entrepreneurship mindset mini course, and a free e-commerce hacks ebook. And you'll get access to the course to the book before anyone else.
Mm.
And then there will be a course coming out shortly after. So to get informed about that, if you go sign up to the book waitlist, you'll get told about the course as well, of course. And the course is an accompaniment to the book. It goes way deeper than the book with tons of worked examples, how-to guides, calculators. There will be live Q&A calls with me.
Wow.
And unlike the 10 grand courses of the gurus, it's $500, which I think is a steal.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. That's amazing.
That's that. Yeah.
That is another example of you giving back to.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I've certainly spent a lot of time developing it.
Yeah. And I think that's a big issue because there are a lot of courses out there. There are a lot of people who are very salesy over the top. They're going to sell you one method that worked for them, but you're bringing so much authenticity because you're saying, look, I didn't have this business background. I fell into entrepreneurship. I was able to figure out how to use the techniques to make this really amazing experience for me and my family and my life and pour into other people's businesses, create more businesses. And now you're pouring into entrepreneurs in a way that they really need right now. So thank you.
Yeah. I think you're right in the sense that people need that because it's overwhelming, the amount of information out there, the amount of conflicting information out there. And it's difficult because you're like, if only I could get that information, but it's a huge investment. And you don't really know that that's legit. And I've seen inside many of these courses and it's kind of underwhelming if you were to pay that much money. So this is, an affordable investment from someone who's been there and done it. And yeah, I think that people are going to really enjoy it.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk about, because the only pain point that I've heard so far really is that you didn't sell successfully in a gyms, but then you transition your message. Were there other pain points that you hit, hurdles that you had to get over when you're building your first business before exiting?
Yeah, absolutely. There was a time that I nearly got sued. So I can tell you about that.
Yeah.
I was still working. I hadn't quit my day job yet. And I got home and found a letter on my doormat. And I opened the letter and it was all in German. And I couldn't read it. I could see the photographs of my product, which was, actually I've got one here. It's the Beast Grips. So this is a thick bar adapter. You use it to make barbells and dumbbells stick.
Oh, nice.
A picture of a pair of those, a copy of my competitor's patent, and I could read the words 50,000 euros. So I called my lawyer because we had done our homework when we registered my patent.
Yeah.
And we knew, or we were fairly certain we weren't infringing on anything. Basically, it turned out these guys were trying to bully me out of business. So I developed a product that they'd existed for like 15, 20 years with like no competition. And they were selling their product for a lot of money, way more than it cost to make. And so I'd come in with a better product, selling at a fair price, and it performed better. And so they were scared that I was eating up market share. So they thought they could bully me out of business. And I'm pretty sure they'd done this several times.
Yikes.
They were actually Canadian, but the reason they sued me in Germany is just because I was selling in multiple countries, including Germany. And I think they just decided to do it in another language to help intimidate me. Anyway, after a protracted battle, when my product was actually one of the marketplaces we sold on was Amazon, as well as through our own website. And so Amazon suspended my product without even checking if their things were true, because that's what they do. The product been down for like 6 weeks. We won because we basically were able to prove, A, that I wasn't infringing, B, and this is kind of hilarious, the huge organization who owned this competitor had bought that brand from another guy just like me. But that guy had made a mistake. He had done his patent drawings on the cheap, and the drawings were not very good. And in fact, they were not a good enough representation of his product. So they didn't actually protect his product.
Oh my gosh.
So we basically said, we will take you to court and invalidate your patent if you don't leave me alone. So basically, if we do that, the whole market will open up. So you can play fair with me or you can play fair with everyone. And they went away pretty quickly.
This speaks to the importance, though, of also making sure that your IP is protected.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I made a huge mistake with my IP shortly before that. So when I first started, I made the newbie error of, I was like asking in Facebook groups and stuff about trademarks. And somebody was like, well, you can just do it yourself for a few $100 or a few £100 in my case. So I was super smug when I registered my own trademarks at the Intellectual Property Office here in the UK. And about a year later, I was receiving some free IP legal advice at the local library. And the attorney there pointed out that actually the depth of coverage of the trademarks I had registered was really poor. And I'd left my brand wide open.
Oh my, yeah.
And so I got a lucky escape because I got away with that. And I actually then hired his firm to go and re-register my marks with way more breadth and depth of protection.
Great.
And I learned at that point that cheap is expensive and expensive is cheap. So basically, if you invest properly in getting things right the first time, it'll work out cheaper and you'll have way fewer headaches in the future.
Yeah, it's really important. You learned a lot of lessons there along the way. And I'm glad it sounds like you have a guardian angel watching over you, because it sounds like things have turned out really well, even with those situations that could have been horrendous.
Yeah, it could have been. There are things I wish I'd done differently. I should have sold the business about 6 months later than I did.
Really?
But yeah. So I sold the business. It was Halloween 2019, the first brand. And of course, shortly after that, COVID hit.
Yeah. And everybody's looking for equipment. And
everybody was looking for fitness equipment to use at home. And most of my equipment could be used at home.
Wow.
And the sales went absolutely bananas. And multiples for businesses went bananas. Having said that, I don't regret making the decision that I did, because I didn't have a crystal ball and it was still the right thing for my family and I. And you can't live your life thinking like that,
Yeah, very true.
So yeah, all's well that ends well.
Yeah, for sure. Is there anything else that you want to share that entrepreneurs should think about when they're going on their journey?
I think, I want to harp back on what I said before, which is authenticity, because authenticity is I don't want to say easy. It's not always easy to implement, but simple to understand concept in terms of how to beat the competition. Because if you're authentic, there is no competition in a way, right? Sure, there's still competitors in your niche, but they're not exactly like you. It's kind of like blue ocean strategy. So I think authenticity is really important. Don't try to copy the brands that are bigger than you. Be inspired by them, but go your own way. I think that really works. That's what resonates with people, and that's what is memorable. And don't get too high when things are going well or too low when things are not going well, because either way, it will level out and pass.
Yeah. Yeah, that's important, because I think people tend to, like you said, you were getting a little smug at one point and thought you could do things yourself. Yes. And then something happened and you said, okay, I got to course correct. Same time, usually if we're in a down cycle, something does happen. So it's really great advice. Just kind of be even keeled, be pragmatic about it, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And do you have a favorite quote, mantra, family motto that you live by?
There's quite a few, but if we're going to talk about brand building and marketing and stuff, I love Seth Godin. Mm-hmm. I mean, who doesn't, right? And Seth Godin said, ideas in secret die, They need light or they will starve to death. And I think that is so important because so many people sit on their ideas for so long and do nothing. Like I actually had the idea for my first brand 4 years before I started it, but I only started it when I had the heart condition. I shouldn't have waited that long to start it, right? So if you have an idea, it needs to see the light of day. Even if that just means telling people about it and then realizing it's not a great idea. But you won't know it's not a great idea until you get it out there.
True. Awesome. That was excellent. I really appreciate you spending time with me today. And I'm really excited for your book to come out. This episode will be coming out around the same time as your book, Quit Stalling and Build Your Brand. And people can go to quitstallingbook.com/YBA, correct? To
That's
get
right.
that free chapter and that mini course and get Yeah.
And even if you're listening after the book is out, still go to that address because you will get the mini course and the e-commerce hacks ebook. So if you head over there, still do that. quitstallingbook.com/YBA.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ben, for being on the show today. I think you're definitely going to inspire a lot of the budding entrepreneurs. I will say this show is kind of multi-generational. Everything from my grad students at USC Annenberg, shout out to them, to people who have been in business for decades. Listen. And so I know that no matter what level people are at, they're going to get a good nugget from your inspirational story and success. And then people can also go to one of your websites, correct? If they want to learn more about working with you for their e-commerce business.
Sure. Yeah. If you want to go to benleonard.pro, Pro, head over there, or just, I'm on social, all the social medias. My handle is Ben Leonard Pro. I'm on LinkedIn.
Perfect.
Email me, ben@benleonard.pro. I'm super keen to chat to anyone. So yeah, give me a shout.
Great. Thank you for being on the show. Thanks to our listeners for coming back for another episode of Your Brand Amplified. I'll be back again in a few days with another amazing expert talking about how you can be successful with your brand. Want more? Check out amplifywithannika.com or follow me on socials at amplifywithannika.